Katey Schultz is first and foremost a writer, a collector of stories, and a bit of a wandering spirit as well. So when she moved to North Carolina, she found herself drawn time and time again to the swinging footbridges that cross the Tow River in Yancey and Mitchell counties. And here we'll let Katey pick up the story.
Well, you can kind of see the old armature through the woods there. The stairs were washed out in 2005 in the floods. But this bridge was built in 1956. It's over the South Tow River. And the reason they didn't rebuild it is because there isn't a child of school age on the other side that has to cross in order to catch a school bus. So that's the only thing that can mandate them rebuilding it. So this one is just basically gonna rot until it falls, I imagine. You'll see there's a bridge closed sign up on one end and a blockade on the other. It's too bad, it's one of the oldest ones in Yancey County.
The footbridges were built after World War II by the North Carolina Department of Transportation to connect families on the remote side of the river with schools and businesses on the other. But to Katey, the bridges were lost crossings to fading memories of the old mountain traditions. And ever curious, she began researching the bridges in the little town of Bakersville.
And everyone had a story, of course, but it was difficult to tell who was talking about which bridge and at what period of time. And there are colloquial names for the bridges. Well, one day I went to the Bakersville Library, and at that point I had no hard data other than an Excel spreadsheet and some aerial photos from the DOT. And she pulled out a file, and in those notes I found one man's name mentioned over and over, and that was George Kip. And it said that he had designed all 13 of the swinging footbridges in Mitchell and Yancey counties, and that he had surveyed them and in some cases custom built some of the armature to pull them off, did all the math, and he had a crew of 6 at that time. So that was interesting to me. I wanted to pursue it, and I found out that his wife Corinne, who's still living, lives just a walking distance from the library. And Corinne Knipe, when I went to ask her about the footbridges, started talking about her husband, who was educated through the 3rd grade and was a self-made man, and yet went on to build these bridges that we're talking about today. So we weren't necessarily talking about the hard facts of the footbridges, and yet we were talking about what really mattered, which was keeping people together and sort of, if you build a bridge to connect things, something's gonna happen.
Discovering the secret history of the bridges prompted Katey to collaborate with photographer Shane Darwin on a book.
I made a pilgrimage to the Honeycutt Bridge, and it was here, where Bad Creek flows into Rock Creek, that this notion of lost crossings came to fruition. Anchored between Highway 226 and a steep hillside, the space begged for interpretation. I could almost hear the stories being told, memories from a way of life nearly forgotten. Yet it wasn't enough to imagine these stories. I stood above a confluence of pure mountain waters and understood it would be necessary to trace the story of each footbridge back to its source. So this is the Honeycutt Bridge. It's the oldest bridge in the state. It was built in 1947 by George and his team. And it crosses Bad Creek here in Mitchell County. It was the main connection for the folks who lived in the community of Honeycutt to get to the highway.
It seems much wider than the other bridges.
Yeah, it is. It's a foot wider because there's a cemetery on the other side of the hill there, and in order to carry coffins across the footbridge, they had to make it wider than any other bridge in the state.
Wow. I wonder when the last time was that they used it for that. How'd you find this bridge?
I met this woman who lives by the Roses Branch Bridge, and I knew there was one down here. This is the Kona-Lunde area. So I asked for directions, and it took a while, but we found our way.
What about that rock formation? Do you know anything about that?
That's pegmatite. This is the Kona-Lunde area. And I think the name comes from this pegmatite boulder, which has potassium, oxygen, and sodium, K-O-N-A, in it. Unless the joke's on me, but that's the best story I heard
Huh.
about how this was named. And everyone around here calls this the Depot Bridge because that used to be an active train depot. It's got a little bounce to it.
Yeah. These cables are amazing.
Wow. This thing is bolted into the pegmatite.
Yeah. I wonder if they blasted it to get the holes in there, but there's like these steel tent pegs driven right into the rock.
Well, it was George Kip and 6 other guys. Pretty amazing. I watch from the steps of the depot as the engine rolls past and the engineer slowly sets the brakes. 10 cars pass, then another 10, then another with no caboose in sight. All the while, the most treacherous, powerful, rumbling sound echoes through the holler, rattling the metal handle on the depot door. The sound is so encompassing, it gives the impression of an earthquake. I feel my bones shake, the chair tremble, and the earth move. I like crossing first, bounding across the swinging footbridges. It's impossible not to smile as the buoyancy of each step pushes my feet forward. On the near side of the Roses Branch Bridge, a handful of rock steps lead to wooden ones, and I'm up. Wooden planks make the walkway, old 2x4s nailed perpendicular to the river across horizontal 4x6 joists. Rusty chicken wire runs from the boardwalk up, tied at about knee height to smaller steel cables coming down from the 2 main lines. The chicken wire is too low to use for balance, but the smaller steel cables will do. Sometimes I reach for them, other times I do not. You'd think it'd be pretty simple to find these things, but I got lost plenty of times trying to find, especially the ones in the South Toe Valley. Thankfully, there's little places like Baloo's Country Store you can pull over and ask for directions.
They've been there ever since I can remember. I don't know when the first one was built, but I do know they made it easy access for some of the farmers that lived across the rivers. They could get across the swinging bridge and get to their houses, and I think that was their sole purpose because they were about 5 or 6 of them in this immediate area.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, look at that.
So this is the Carson's Rock Bridge. It was built in 1960. It crosses the South Toe River. And it's the southernmost footbridge.
Katey Schultz is still wandering. Since Lost Crossings was published, Katey has been exploring and writing in Texas, Michigan, even Alaska. But she keeps returning to the footbridges here in North Carolina. These remarkable artifacts of history dangling between heritage and disarray, begging to be rediscovered.
And on a clear day, you can see Mount Mitchell in the distance there. The way to find Mount Mitchell is to look far and then look farther. That's the highest peak this side of the Mississippi. Oh, it's getting bouncy.
Oh yeah, good bounce.